Larissa, welcome.
Thank you so much, Sandy, for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Of course, I am so excited to have you here. I got to be honest, I'm kind of fangirling a little bit. I know we're colleagues, friends, but when I was going through the field, I mean, I remember thinking to myself, like, I want to be Larissa Hawley. And I'm sure so many women across the industry can like echo that sentiment, especially, you know, you've been a national consultant now for 20 years. And when I started, you already were a national consultant. And at the time, not that many female examples. And you've just been that role model for so many girls in our industry for so long. So thank you
Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you for everything that you've done. I feel so excited to like dive into your story because I've kind of always heard it from so many other people, but like to hear it straight from you is really getting me pumped up. So let's just start there. What was life like for you before you got into the industry, and how did you get introduced to face-to-face sales?
Yeah, oh gosh. So if anybody had filmed my life before I was in this industry, it would be very motivating because I think everybody would say, wow, if that ball could do this, then anyone can do it.
That's awesome.
But when I first started, I really had just graduated from college.
Yeah.
I went to Bentley University and I had a great time. It was a small private business college.
Yeah.
You know, I graduated with a double major in marketing and international business and a minor in Spanish.
Cool.
And you know, my expectation was, oh, I, you know, went to this, you know, great school for business. I'm just going to get this unbelievable job in some, you know, corner office, floor to ceiling glass, you know, making, you know, 85 grand a year. And then of course I graduated and realized
not the reality.
You got to start somewhere, and that's not going to be it. And so when I graduated in May, my parents at the time were living in San Diego. So I left Boston, you know, where I was going to school, and moved in with my parents. I was very motivated about the beach,
yes,
you know, and that was very important to me at my 22-year-old life.
Yeah.
And I remember telling my parents, listen, I know, you know, party's over, I get it, college is done, and now I'm gonna have to work the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And my visual of that was, oh my gosh, I'm gonna be rotting away in some office for the next 40 years of my life, because that was my expectation. And I told my parents, listen, I'm gonna have to work the rest of my life. I just wanna have one last summer with no responsibilities.
I love that.
I'm pretty sure that's literally what I said to them, and they looked at me incredibly concerned. And they said, okay, well, you know, we're not super supportive of this, but if you want to take a couple months, that's fine, but you know, you still have to pay your own bills and things like that. So when you run out of money, it's going to be time to look for a job. And I said, deal, I'll take it.
That's a good deal. I would take that.
That was the best deal I was going to get. So I took it, and from May until, you know, the middle of August, I was just a professional beach bum, and you know, hosted the beach blanket for all of my friends that were working, but they were doing like retail jobs or whatever. So everyone was kind of coming and going, and it was a great party all summer. I ran out of money in the middle of August, and then as the deal went, you know, I had to start looking for a job. I think I saw an ad and, you know, went in a bunch of interviews, and then eventually started with the office that I started in.
I believe you were like in store.
At the time, we were doing outside events.
Ah, okay, yes.
So yeah, it was working with nonprofit organizations and children's like safety things and stuff like that. I'll never forget my first round interview, Sandy, because the ICD owner that was doing my interview, she literally was looking at my resume and she said, okay, so how long have you been unemployed? And I remember like it was like a shock wave that went through my body, and I was like, wait a minute, okay, think. And I was like, oh, I'm not unemployed, I was just a student, you know? And I was like, that's gotta be good enough to say, right? You know, save me. And she looked at the resume and she looked at me and she said, oh no, it says here that you graduated in May. And I was like, yeah, that's right. And she's like, okay, so then you've been unemployed for 3.5 months.
Like I hosted a beach party all summer.
And I was like, oh my God. And from that moment on, I blacked out. I don't even really remember the rest of the interview, because now all I could think about was, oh my goodness, I'm officially an unemployed person. And I freaked out and I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get a job? But I really, really was attracted to how well she was able to communicate. She was so polished. She was so professional. She was just so sharp, you know, as a person. I didn't really know that she was the owner. I didn't really know what role she played in the company. I just knew that she must be somehow, some way high up.
Yes.
And she was really, really young to be so polished.
Yeah.
And so I just remember looking at her in that first round interview and thinking, my gosh, like if I can learn how to communicate like that,
Cool.
you know, I was just curious to then learn more about her business and what was going on.
That's cool. And so did you come in for like a second round interview to see the field work?
Yeah. So somehow through fumbling through that first round, somehow she selected me to come back for the second round, and I was so appreciative and so excited about it. Actually, what the second round interview was going on site to watch the actual event happening, and then it was a great way to interview because then I was able to really see what I would be doing on the day to day. So before they made any final decisions about me or I made any final decisions about them, every party was making a well-educated decision on whether this was going to be something they wanted to do or not. But I'll never forget, we pulled into like a Vons strip mall parking lot. She pops the trunk and takes this like bucket of, you know, product inventory that we were selling, and a percentage of it would go back to help the nonprofit. And that's really what we were doing. And so I remember looking at the bin of inventory and like looking at her being very confused. And I was like, oh, what's going on here? And she's like, well, we're going to set up the event. And I just like looked around this like mall parking lot and I was like, where? She's like, here, you know, in front of the grocery store. And then I was really not excited, right? Then I was really like, wait, I have a degree. I went to this really nice business school. Like, this isn't what I'm going to do out of college. Like, this was like, it was basically like, you know, a pop-up table with a bunch of inventory, and, you know, it kind of was like a Girl Scout table outside of a grocery store. And that's really what, how elementary the event was. The person who did my interview did a fantastic job. Just challenging me again, you know, and, you know, challenging if I understood why what they were doing was so effective. And it blew my mind how simple, I could see that there was a pattern to what she was doing and how she was engaging with customers and things like that. I was just never a person that ever would have stopped for somebody going in and out of a grocery store. So I was blown away by the number of people that actually stopped. I watched her have like a 45-second non-socially awkward conversation with a complete stranger. Some people that looked like they also didn't, you know, they wouldn't have wanted to stop, but somehow she was getting a certain percentage of people to stop, engage. And I was blown away with watching the actual results of how much, you know, product they were selling and how much they helped the nonprofit that day. And so it was really just seeing the results in front of my face that I was skeptical about from the beginning of the interview. And then it became about, wow, like this person is so much more qualified than I am for any other position. And if she's willing to do this seemingly really entry-level position, and she's so good at what she's doing, and I could understand that like the way she was communicating with people was just so profound to me because it was so simple, but it was so effective. And it just blew my mind how it worked. And so I looked at it and I just said, okay, literally I was like, this is definitely not what I want to do. I'm not going to do this, but I want to fight for the position so that they offer me the position so I can come into this company and check it out for 2 weeks. And I want to learn what it is that she's doing. I want to learn how to communicate the way she's communicating because I understood if I wanted to do something really big in any business, in any industry, learning the skill set that she had with how she was engaging with these customers was going to be a really big asset, you know, and a really great skill set to have. So I looked at it like, okay, let me start. Let me learn what's going on here. And then in a couple of weeks, I'll quit. And that was literally my mentality.
That was it. And I had actually a very similar experience where I feel like you might agree. She made it look easy, right? Because then you get hired, obviously, then you go out and now you have to do this. How was the field for you initially?
You know, my trainer was so unbelievable at just putting all the pressure on those simple marketing systems. And she literally kept it that simple. And she just had an unwavering positive attitude. She had a lot of fun. She made it very fun. So honestly, when I started, because of how simple she kept the marketing systems and because of how structured, you know, everything was and just really systematic, the marketing and sales came very, very easy to me. Came really, really quickly. I think if I had had a trainer that was using a lot of their personality or things like that, the field would have been incredibly hard for me. but she kept it really simple, made it really easy to duplicate. And so I just watched what she did and copied her.
That's awesome. And I think that's so important because I think people feel like to be good at sales, you have to be this like super extroverted and charismatic person. But like the reality is the more simple you keep it, the easier. And I think so many people like myself, I did try to overcomplicate it and I was so nervous and I did not pick it up right away. But again, having a good mentor that can show you that this is just literally just a conversation is so important. So I guess let's pull some insights from that. So if there's someone that is trying to get good at sales and maybe doesn't have that example from like that you had, what would be your best advice for them to really kind of get comfortable in their own skin and having conversations?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, if I was in the field and I was really struggling with consistency with my results, I would try and find somebody who's at the top, and I would network with them, and I would specifically try and find somebody. And I would probably lead with the networking call, like, I'm struggling with consistency in the field. I'm looking to find somebody that I can really copy, and I think I would start there and try and figure out, who is using a very systematic approach to the field and just putting a lot of pressure on those marketing systems and try and, duplicate and copy what they're doing.
That's great. And so your parents wanted you to get a job and then they find out now you're doing a face-to-face job at a table in front of Vons. What was their initial reaction? It was definitely a situation at the Hawley house when they really figured out exactly what I was doing. So I came home when I got the job offer, and of course they were on my case, as one would if, I just took the whole summer off. And so they were on my case about finding a job and things like that. So I was thinking that I was going to go home and share all this really great news. So I was like, I got a job, it's going to be great. And my mom and dad were like, that's great, honey. What are you going to be doing? And so I told them, well, it's a position where there's a lot of room to grow and advance. And that's what I'm excited about is, starting somewhere, gaining some experience and growing and advancing quickly. And they said, okay, well, that's great. That sounds great. But what are you going to be doing? And I said, well, the first thing that I'm going to learn is marketing. And they were like, okay, what are you going to be marketing? And I said, well, we're representing and helping, nonprofits, and those are our clients, And they were like, okay, but what are you going to be doing? And then I said, well, those people that are outside of the grocery stores, and I couldn't even finish the sentence, and my mom was like, oh no, like what are the neighbors going to think? Of course,
what are you doing? You went to college. We just paid all this money for you to go to college, and this is what you're doing. Like, no, absolutely not. I just said, well, if I have a great student mentality and I'm willing to work really hard, and, I have a great attitude that, I can grow and advance quickly. There's no seniority. And that's what I loved. Those were the things that I was, focused on. But my parents were not having it.
No. And so how long were you in like the field before you realized like, okay, maybe I can start my own sales business like this? Like, when did you decide that you could do this a little bit more long-term than just the 2-3 weeks of experience that you wanted to gain initially?
Yeah, well, it's funny, Sandy, because when I graduated college, I told myself that I would never do sales. I just didn't like the idea of salespeople. Like the thing that came to mind was like a used car,
of course,
salesman or something. And I just looked at sales like it was such a negative thing. What totally changed my opinion or perspective on that was the fact that my trainer in the field did such a fantastic job of keeping it so simple and really, the approach was so indifferent and the approach was so like, hey, if you can use it, great. If not, no worries. And because there was it wasn't like high pressure sales.
Pushy or anything.
Yeah, it wasn't pushy or any of that stuff. Then, it opened up my mind, like maybe I could learn this and maybe I could do this. What really changed and made me think maybe I could really do this was when I started to network with people and I started to learn how to teach and train other people the way I was trained. And so I started to see, oh wow, like I am learning all these incredible skill sets. And I am learning how to, package and present who I am and what we're doing and, being able to attract other people to want to work with me. And then, once I started to see that I could actually hire and train people and they really enjoyed the skill sets that they were learning, that made me excited.
Cool.
You know, because then I was like, wow, I'm finding other people that are getting just as excited as I am about learning all these incredible skill sets, that whether or not I was going to stay in this industry for 21 years as it has been, or whether I was just going to learn some things and take that skill set elsewhere, I just really appreciated and respected so much what I was learning every single day.
Totally.
So that's what I told myself and ended up telling my parents. I said, Mom, Dad, you know, I understand that this is really unorthodox and I understand that this is not at all the career path that you would have chosen for me. But I told them, hey, listen, I don't expect you to be supportive at this stage because there's a lot of unknowns and who knows if I'm going to like this or be good at this. But just please don't be negative and give me an opportunity to keep coming in every single day. And I said, I made a promise to them and I said, the day that I don't feel like I'm learning something that can make me a better human being, a better person in business, you know, then, and I feel like I'm not growing, then I'll quit and I'll go do something different. And obviously, Sandy, I'm here 21 years later and I'm still here because I'm still learning something new every single day. I'm still growing as an individual, personal development, professional development. I'm still experiencing that every single day doing, you know, what I'm doing.
20 some years later.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And I love what you said to your parents, because I think so many people kind of struggle with like having or not having support when they go back home, because it is a very different and unique business. And like you said, like you didn't even quite fully grasp or understand the opportunity that was attached to it, let alone, you know, parents or boyfriend and girlfriend at home. So I love that conversation of like, you don't have to support me, but like, just please don't be negative and like, let me see this thing through, right?
Right.
And so how long from when you started in the field until you got to a point where you're like, you're good at the sales, you know how to teach and train people, you've built a team of people, maybe it's now time for you to start your own business. How long did that process take?
You know, it's funny because I was so focused on, I just want to hurry up and become a business owner. You know, I just want to become the business owner, you know? And then I think it was probably, you know, maybe a few weeks before I was officially going to start my own business, that I started to panic a little bit, and I started to think, wait a minute, maybe I'm not ready, maybe I can't do this, you know, things like that. But you know, one of my mentors at the time said to me, hey, Larissa, like, you should never worry about being prepared to be the business owner, because everything that you had to do to run and manage a business in this industry, you've had to become an expert at doing. And I said, well, what do you mean? And he said to me, well, just think about it this way. If you show up to your office one day and you're the only one that shows up, nobody else shows up, you know, would you know how to rebuild it? And I thought about that and I said, well, what do you mean? You know? And he said, well, do you know how to interview people? And I said, well, yeah, of course. Like, obviously, I've just done that, you know.
You have that skill set.
Do you know how to develop people and teach them how to do, you know, the marketing and the sales? And I said, well, obviously, yes. Can you teach people how to do really well with that? Yeah, obviously, right? Can you teach other people how to interview? And can you teach other people how to train people? And I said, well, yeah, obviously, you know, that's what I've been doing, you know. And he said, exactly. So he said, so you never have to work for anybody else ever again unless you choose to. And the only reason why you would choose to is if something happens and you're unwilling to rebuild the business. That's the only reason why this wouldn't work out for you. Otherwise, you have literally, you know, you have the skill set. And once you have the skill set of becoming an expert in our industry, nobody can take that skill set away.
That's awesome.
And the minute that I really realized that, not only did I have so much more confidence in my future and what I could create and accomplish in this industry, but I felt so much more relaxed that it's always going to work out as long as I choose to work it out.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, you just explained like the beauty of our industry. How you are in the field is how you will be as the business owner.
Exactly.
And I think so often people don't realize like the magic that's actually happening by you getting up every day and showing up to the field. And I mean, as a business owner, you got to get up every single day and you got to have the best attitude. You got to have the best work ethic. And like you mentioned earlier, you have to have those people skills. And I mean, you literally are learning that by doing face-to-face sales. And I feel like people don't really sit in that space and be like, okay, this is where I'm going to learn how to be that business owner.
Exactly. Really making sure that anybody coming into our industry really does understand the purpose is to develop the habits, the disciplines, the consistencies, and the skill sets that we really need to become masters at and experts at in order to really, really succeed. You know that you've mastered the skill sets needed to succeed there. So the only reason why, someone wouldn't be successful once they get there is they just choose to stop doing what they had to get there in the first place.
That's awesome. Yeah. You really had such an incredible and remarkable career. I think, you were one of the fastest to get into a national consultant role. I remember hearing how you were one of the fastest to make their first $1 million. But, back then, 20 years ago, it was really unheard of. So what do you credit your rapid success to?
Well, Sandy, I had incredible mentors. And thank goodness I had it within me to put an ego aside, any ego that I may have had, put my pride aside, put all that stuff on the shelf over here and just be a student and a sponge. And I just remember that was really one of the things that attracted me the most to our industry and kept me, coming back every single day, starting from when I was, in my infancy and this industry was how much I was learning. And so I just wanted to just learn how I could be the best version of myself. And thank goodness I had unbelievable mentors that had all the tough conversations with me. They were extremely transparent. They were extremely direct, which I needed, and that really helped me just continue to better myself and my skill set every single day. And I truly, deeply cared to come through for other people. I was so grateful, and I still am so grateful that I've always seemed to have such hardworking, big thinking, goal-driven business partners, really. And so I would see how hard they were working every single day side by side with me, and it just made me want to step up my game and always, make sure that I was working as hard as I could and as smart as I could. And I really just think, having fun with all the learning curves made it possible to grow so quickly.
That's awesome. And obviously having great leaders speaks to your ability to attract great leaders. What would you say now, 20 years into this, what is a fundamental philosophy that you've come to truly believe in and that you've sort of reinforced throughout the years to your team?
It was something that was always talked about when I was really, really new in this industry was, leadership and leading from the front and being the right example. And of course, it makes sense in theory, right? But I really did see throughout my journey, there were a lot of people that didn't really lead from the front. And I had a front row seat, to some of those situations, and I would just observe people, and I would observe and study, what would happen when there was a person in a leadership role that stopped really doing all the right things and started kind of being sort of the leader where it's do as I say, but not as I'm doing. And I watched those situations crumble. And so the magnitude of watching some of those stories unfold before my eyes, I just started to really realize it is so important to lead by example. Because, respect and trust is not something that you can buy. It's not something that you can demand out of another human being. It's something truly that's earned through somebody's experience working with somebody. And so I took that very, very seriously. And it was a priority and on my mind all day, every day to obnoxiously lead by example. And anything that I expected anybody else to do that was working with me in any type of capacity, I knew that, I would show them intentionally that there's nothing that I'm going to ever ask somebody to do that I'm not personally willing to do side by side with them. And I'm not going to learn how to do it really, really well. If I'm ever going to expect something out of somebody, I better be able to do it twice as good as them. And I think that led to being able to, develop so many other people to be really, really successful as well. Because if my example of how I was running my business was 2x anything that I would have expected out of somebody to still be really successful, then if they did half of what I showed them in my business, I knew they would be profitable. I knew they would be successful. And if they're successful and they're experiencing, profitability and things like that, that's going to build their confidence. And it's also going to help them stay excited to be a part of the industry for a while.
Yeah, that's such great advice. It reminds me of one of my favorite quotes by Jim Rohn. He says, success is not something you pursue. It's something that you attract by the person that you become. And I remember when I was recruiting, I was a kid. I was coming into the office disheveled and waking up late and not really prepared. And the type of people that were attracted to my team were like me. And so I wasn't growing fast at all. And then it's, when I heard that, if you want a better team, you kind of have to become a better leader yourself.
Yes.
It's crazy how the caliber of the person attracted to me and joining my team changed as well. And so how did that look for you in practice as a business owner or even as a national consultant? And also, how do you maintain that level of high standard for so many years?
Well, it was always a priority, Sandy, to always be a student. So if there was ever something, a metric within my personal business that I knew could be better, even if I was running the top business at the time, I still always wanted to network with whoever was doing better than me at a certain part of my business. And I was manic about it. That was it would drive me nuts thinking about if I wasn't at the top of every metric. It would drive me nuts, and I would just work at it until I fixed it. And so anybody working with me in my business, that was their example, that was their reference point. So when they started running their own business, a lot of those traits carried over. I think I was able to maintain a level of consistency in high performance through just developing habits that really just become ingrained into who you become and who you are and how you operate. So I just had incredibly high standards for myself. And because I had high standards for myself, I cared a lot to make sure that I was always on top of every detail that I could possibly be on top of. And if I wasn't, I would be a student and network about it. But also just consistently trying to grow personally. So I read a lot of books. I again continued to just be a great student of my mentors. I called constantly people that were doing better than me and just wanting to get better myself. And then I think, everything that I learned, I would share that with business owners that I worked closely with. And so it gave them an opportunity to learn from my failure or my experience or, things like that. And so, just collectively, I just always wanted to bring everybody up. And if I was learning something or, I was learning how to improve something, I wanted everybody to know what I was doing and how I was doing it. And just collectively, everybody kind of rose to the top.
That's awesome. So again, going back to just leading by example and being that carbon copy for your team.
Sure.
I was speaking with Julia Davis earlier, and she's another national consultant in our industry, and you were her mentor, and Julia has gone on to also become a millionaire in our industry. And you have a lot of stories of people that you mentor that have become extremely successful, which is incredible, and again speaks to your hard work and your ability to really package and present and really help people.
Thank you.
But she shared a really cool story. She said when she was in the field, you would always tell your team, for every person that I help put into business, I'm going to reward myself with a gift. What was that gift?
Yes. I was very goal-oriented. It's true. For every personal goal that I met, I would attach a personal reward, which probably also helped me push myself and always want to grow and hit my goals. So when in my earlier years, I really, really loved Louis Vuitton handbags. And so back then, my goal was I wouldn't, and even though I was at that time, I was making really great money and I could have purchased a bag anytime I really wanted. But I knew my personality and I knew myself and I knew I was going to be able to stay more focused and make sure I hit that goal if the only way I allowed myself to get a new bag was if I hit that goal.
That's so cool.
So thank goodness, I got pretty good at teaching people how to run their own business and things like that. So I was
Yes.
able to get multiple bags every year. But that was it. And I would usually
That's so
take,
cool.
if whoever I was working with at the time was also really into that, I would take them with me, and they would be a part of helping me pick out my new Louis Vuitton bag.
Oh my
and,
gosh, I love that. I feel like every time I see you, you have like a new Chanel bag, a new Chanel blazer, jewelry.
As the years went on, I switched brands. Yes.
Switch brands. I love it. And I think it's important to mention you now have a closet specifically for your purses, right?
I do.
I also heard you're very financially savvy. Tell us a little bit about like what you've invested in and how you've sort of diversified your portfolio over the years as well.
Sure, yeah. Things that I've done, real estate, being going in with an investment team on, whether it's apartment buildings or hotels, things like that, I've done. I own land. I own, other properties and things like that. Things that came up that I thought were good opportunities and investments to buy at the time. And then, I learned from a lot of my mentors in the industry. They would have great financial advisors that would invest, into, portfolios of things, whether it's in the market or, other companies to invest in and things like that. So I've done a lot of investing in startup companies or investing in the market, and I try and diversify a little bit. But I learned from my father, actually. He was really, really smart with money. He was never... he was never, a multi-millionaire earner annually, like a lot of people are in our industry. But he became, a multi-millionaire based on just really living below his means, living below our means. So growing up, I learned frugality through him. And so I think that helped me a lot, because in my early years, I really wanted to save a lot of money to reinvest back into the industry, reinvest back into my business, which really helped me scale and grow my business quickly and pretty profoundly. And then, as I started to make more and more money, I continued to live below my means as well for a very long time.
That's really good.
I probably still live below my means, but I still also really like enjoying, nicer things and having a little bit more of a lifestyle. So I do reward myself way more than I used to back in the day. But I feel like I'm also at that point, I'm comfortable doing that because I've saved so much and because I've invested so much, and I know I'll be fine.
Is it crazy to you to 20 years later, you're seeing how many $1 million earners we have in our industry, even how much the average, some of the average paychecks of sales reps, like the money that they make in the field, the money that they're making as owners. I mean, it's wild how much has changed. What does that feel like to you?
It is so incredible to watch. I remember when I first started, the only reason to start in our industry and to work really, really hard was just for the chance to become a business owner.
Yes.
That was it. That was the whole reason why someone would be willing to work so hard. And as a business owner, top owners at the time were making $150,000. That was like, wow, you're doing great, right? And so to think, here we are 21 years later, and that has legitimately just changed. It's really exciting. It's really incredible. I'm just so thrilled for people that are just now starting in our industry, because where this is going to be 20 years from now is just incredible to think about.
I believe it. And we're just getting started, it seems. And to have, people like you still leading the way for so many, I mean, I can only imagine what 10 years from now this industry is going to look like.
But the catch is, it's really, really hard work.
Yes.
There are going to be moments where it's really, really hard work. There are going to be, there's a lot of investments of our time personally that we have to be willing to make in order to yield that kind of result. But for those people that are really, really hungry, that have an above average work ethic, they have above average goals, they really want to accomplish a lot in a shorter period of time, there's no better time to start.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sitting down with me. This has been such a cool interview for me.
Oh, my pleasure. This was really great for me, so thank you so much.
I look forward to sitting down with you again, hopefully later this year, and maybe we can, come do a tour of your Chanel closet.
Oh, I would love that. Anytime, Sandy.
I love it. Thank you, Larissa.
Thank you.